Welcome to Unboxing History, the podcast where we take a deep dive into the artifacts that are part of the Galveston County Museum collection. I'm Christine Hopkins.
And I'm Jodi Wright-Gidley, director of the museum.
So behind every artifact in the Galveston County Museum, there's a face, there's a family, there's a story. And a lot of times when people think of immigration, they think of Ellis Island. Well, Galveston has a huge connection to immigration, and we're going to explore a little bit more about that with some personal stories today on Unboxing History. So we're going to uncover the Galveston Movement, which changed lives, really changed Texas and the South.
Galveston played a huge role in immigration. Ellis Island in the New York area was getting very crowded. The federal government purposely wanted to find a new port where they could bring immigrants in and have them settle the western United States. And so the Galveston Movement was also called the Galveston Plan. And that was when there was a real effort to bring in Jewish people from Eastern Europe who were being persecuted. And they picked Galveston because a couple of things. One, there was a gentleman here named Rabbi Cohen who was here ready to help, really involved with the program. And he was also in a town of Galveston that had the Lloyd shipping line, which serviced Bremen, Germany. So it made it really easy for Eastern European Jewish people to get to Bremen, Germany, get on the ship, and come directly to Galveston, where Mr. Cohen would be here to help them out.
So we have something behind us. And one of the things I read about Rabbi Cohen is that he personally met every single Jewish immigrant that was coming through Galveston.
That's right.
So
we're not unboxing something today, but we're going to unveil a portrait of Rabbi Cohen. And so Mr. Cohen definitely did greet immigrants when they arrived. The very first group of immigrants also had the mayor of Galveston also greet them, but Cohen greeted every ship that came. And so he would bring them into Galveston, feed them, talk to them, and he had ideas of where he could put them for employment. And they didn't all stay here in Galveston. Many of them would settle in other places, and he would try to match their skills or their interests to the place where they could go and get a job. So he would feed them, buy them their railroad ticket, make sure they had food and clothes ready for that journey, and send them on their way. So a lot of immigrants stayed here in Galveston maybe 1 or 2 days at the most, and then went on to their new home.
So Jodi, how long did the Galveston Movement last, and what brought it to an end?
So it lasted from about 1907 to 1914. There was always the plan to have it be a designated time period. They chose to bring over 100 ships of immigrants, not really knowing how many would be on each ship, but they would just say, let's do 100 ships. And then World War I broke out, and that really ended it in 1914.
As we've talked about, one of the wonderful things about visiting a museum, especially the Galveston County Museum, is you can put these families and these faces as part of these stories. So we have 2 special guests today. Tell me about that.
Yes, so we have 2 ladies that are going to tell their story about how their family came over on the Galveston Movement, knew Rabbi Cohen, and there's a lot of really interesting stuff they're going to tell us. We're going to meet Shelly, Kessler, and Francine Beckman,
who are sisters.
Welcome, Francine and Shelly, and we're so glad you're here to tell your family's story. So where did your family immigrate from, and do you know why they came to Galveston on the Galveston Movement?
You want to
go ahead.
Okay. So my grandparents came from an area of, actually it was an area at the time of Austria-Hungary, which is now part of Ukraine, and the area was called Stri. And it's so interesting because I don't know exactly why Grandma took the leap to come. But my grandmother was 17 years old, not married. She came over in 1907 in the Galveston Plan, and she was very fortunate to come with her cousins, the Grabers. Grabers are still in town. There's the Goldhursts and the Steins, and we're all descendants. And she came with the mama and like 3 kids. So she was 17. So I'm thinking maybe they asked her to come to, help with the kids because the father was already over here. So she came, and was here for about a year, and this is the story goes, and we had it verified. My grandmother worked for a Mrs. Levy, one of the prominent Levys in the family, just in the community, doing the house for concession. You know, one day they found my grandmother crying. Why are you crying? You know, my brother is still in Europe, and I wanted to get him out of here. Blah blah blah. And so, you know, they gathered up the money. I don't know if they went to Rabbi Cohen or not. You know, they got the money.
He helped, I think.
We think Rabbi Cohen helped. And so a year later in 1911, her brother comes over. And when my grandmother met him at the dock, the kiss was not a brotherly kiss. It was boyfriend, girlfriend. It was actually my grandfather. They were boyfriend, girlfriend in Europe. And so he got over here in September of 1911, and they got married here in Galveston in November of 1911.
Okay.
And, you know, I kind of think that maybe, you know, I love to be like conspiratorial. Maybe the whole thing was to get so that Grandpa didn't have to serve in the.
Well, that's one of the reasons that so many of the young men were leaving Europe at the time, because they were being conscripted, and they didn't. Yeah, they were part of the Austria-Hungarian Empire at the time before World War I, and they needed to get out. So many of them came for that reason.
Yeah.
But of course, he had his sweetheart.
Yes. That was a motivator.
That was a big motivator.
Yeah. Do you know about the journey over here and what anybody thought about Galveston once they arrived?
Well, they never really talked about the journey, just that we assumed that they were all in steerage. I'm sure there was no money to have any kind of luxury on the trip over.
One of the Goldhosh kids, probably maybe it was Robert or maybe Richard, I don't remember, talked about Adele Goldhirsch was one of the children that came over. And, you know, Goldhirsch's, he was, the father was, the son was a dentist, and they owned Star Furniture and blah, blah. He always said that Adele said she would never go on a ship again because it was so wretched. But it's the immigrants never talked about Europe.
No.
My grandmother never, ever spoke about Europe.
The only thing I remember, my grandfather, he would talk about, he always said he was from Austria. So I always assumed growing up he was from Austria. So I didn't learn until many, many years later that he was from the Ukraine area when I went to look it up on a map. But at the time, it was all part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So in his mind, he was from Austria. So that was always interesting.
Because, you know, it's so interesting because when they talk about the Galveston plan that Rachel's written about in her book, you know, they keep talking about the Russian Jews.
Yeah.
And we never really thought of our grandparents as Russian Jews.
No.
I mean, you know, we just thought they were from Austria. But, you know, as they say, after the war became Ukraine. And, yeah, so it was all the that whole area. So
Do you know if they left out of Bremen, Germany?
Yes.
Yeah. Because I think everybody on the Galveston movement in the Galveston
they came on the boat at different times on the Hanover.
Okay.
And I don't know if the museum has a copy of the document that was, or the brochure that. Okay, I have it. I'll give it to you. The Rice Archives has the original one, a copy of the original one in Yiddish, and someone translated it.
Okay.
And it talks about, you know, trying to get people to come to Texas because if you think about it, everybody was going to the Lower East Side, and that's where all of their families were. And why would they want to come to a place called Texas? So it was this brochure about, you know, how you can get to the United States if you want to go through Texas. And it talked about the ships that, you know, there's the Hanover and the Frankfurt, and they leave every so often, blah, blah, blah. And so it was from Bremen.
You were asking about when they got here. when they got here, it was a hard life. It was a really hard life for them. They worked hard. Once my grandparents got married, and my grandfather was a painter, and my grandmother, of course, had been working as a housekeeper. But they tried several different ventures. They had like a furniture store, and then we've just realized too they had like just like a general store, and things just did not work out for them at all. So by early 1914, they were ready to go back.
Oh.
And they actually purchased tickets to go back.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately for us, World War I broke out.
Yeah, and that's something to say that we are fortunate, but for our family, thank God.
It would have been very
and
different.
they couldn't return.
Yeah. They had stopped all passenger travel, so.
So most what I've read is when immigrants would come over, Rabbi Cohen would arrange for them to have a job somewhere, and most didn't stay here in Galveston. Correct. They would be relocated somewhere else. So do you know why your family stayed?
I think my family stayed because the family that my grandmother came with, the Grabers, they were actually here. They came over first, and then brother and two brothers, and then they went back and brought the rest of their families over. And I don't really think my grandmother really had any desire to go further. And then, of course, when Grandpa came, they just stayed.
And they had connections here. So
yeah. But Jimmy, my husband, always when he talked about the Galveston plan, and it was also in Rachel's book and other books, the history that the plan was really supposed to get Jews to come into Galveston, change clothes, spend the night, and then get on a train and go up to the hinterlands and to really populate the Midwest with a lot of Jewish immigrants. And so most of them either stayed in Galveston or Houston or somewhere in Texas. So the organizers of the plan felt it was a failure because they just didn't get the thousands and thousands that they wanted. But for people like us, we're grateful every day for it. But Jimmy would say, says, can you imagine someone gets off the boat in Europe, doesn't speak the language, gets on a train, and they take him up to, past Houston to the
like Amarillo,
Texas, right?
Where
Kansas
City,
the plains, and they're like, I'm not going any further. I'm staying here. And I think that's why there are so many Jewish merchants in little towns throughout the state. They stopped. They became peddlers, and they opened up dry goods and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So
I read that was pretty common.
Very much, yeah. And Jimmy said that they said, I'm not going any further.
Yeah. So do you have photos, letters? You brought some things with you today. Do you want to show us? So tell me about the photo.
So this is a picture that my husband has called my legitimacy picture. I don't know if he was very funny. He always had a chuckle. And it's a picture this is my parents getting married, my maternal grandparents, but also one I want to show you for this are my paternal grandparents. So this picture right here are my paternal grandparents, Clara Reinhardt and Fred Niesenblatt, who, as we talked about, Clara Reinhardt came over in 1909, and she got her brother, Fred Niesenblatt, boyfriend, over in 1911. In September, he arrived, and they married in November of 1911. And just as an aside, I only have a copy now because I gave the original to the Rice Archives. But a number of years ago, the clerk of courts for the Galveston County put something in the paper that they had digitized all the marriage certificates for the whole 1900s, and people could come and pick up if they still had, on file, marriage certificates. My parents didn't get married in Galveston. They got married in Canada, where my mom's from. So I'm going to go see if my grandparents wedding licenses there. And sure enough, I got it. And as I say, I just have a little copy now, but I sent it to the Rice Archives. But it has the date, and they weren't married by Rabbi Cohen. They were married by the Orthodox rabbi.
So can y'all speak about how Galveston had both an Orthodox and a Reform synagogue?
Sure. So when the immigrants, probably mostly German immigrants, came to Galveston in the 1800s, late 1800s, they were wealthier, and they were were the Reform Jews at that time. And when they came here, they established Temple B'nai Israel, which was the second synagogue in the state of Texas. And I think they had another rabbi at first, but then they hired Rabbi Cohen, and he was in Temple B'nai Israel for many years until he died in 1852. Meantime, we had all of these very Orthodox Jews in Eastern Europe that were in the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
Not as educated.
Not as educated, not wealthy at all. And these were the immigrants that were coming into the U.S., going to New York, and not having jobs, not being able to work. And that's why the Galveston Plan was established, to try to bring some of these people into Galveston and through Texas and throughout the United States. So when they came, they were very Orthodox, lived very religious lives. And so they established...
And by Orthodox, we mean like they kept kosher. They didn't ride on the Sabbath. They didn't... Well, I guess there was electricity then, but... I know my grandmother...
Probably not originally.
Not originally. My grandmother, I think, as I remember, she had kept her gas flame going on her stove.
Right.
Because you weren't supposed to turn it off and on. I'm like, she didn't pull it out.
Oh.
Yeah, so they came over and established their own synagogue. So you had, like our grandparents belonged to the synagogue, but they adored Rabbi Cohen, and he was so wonderful to them and with them.
But here's the interesting thing about Henry Cohen that I find so phenomenal, that the Orthodox community, even though they didn't belong to his congregation, adored him. And my daddy and most of the kids of the generation of the children of the immigrants, when they, become of age, like 10, 11, you go to Hebrew school where you learn, Hebrew.
They started even
They probably started even longer. And it's called Cheder, which is the Yiddish word for Hebrew school or school. And they would, during the week, they would go to the shul for their Hebrew lessons and so on, and the traditional stuff. And on Sundays, they went to the temple to be in Dr. Cohen's confirmation class. And because Dr. Cohen could teach them how to be good Jews in America. And I find that so fascinating. Our daddy was confirmed by Dr. Cohen, as well as many of the children of the very Orthodox immigrants. And that is something that's very, very unusual. Orthodox synagogue and the temple, the Reform congregation, as I said, were two totally opposite branches of Judaism. You would never see that in another community.
Not at all.
Tell us about what you brought.
We are privileged to still have my grandmother, Clara Newsom-Blatt's wedding dress from November of 1911. And you can see, obviously, it's ragged on the edges, but think about the fact that she was a very poor immigrant, and it's almost like a Muslim cloth, right? But yet very nicely done.
Do you think she made it?
I don't think so. I don't think Grandma was a seamstress. Yeah,
I don't remember.
Yeah,
at all.
But it's been in the family forever. Obviously, 1911, and we're very, very proud of the fact that we still own it. And to confirm it, I have this picture of my parents, Felice and Sam Newsom Black. And on that side is my mother's family of parents who are from Canada. And here are the two immigrants, Fred Newsom Black and Clara Newsom Black, Clara Reinhardt Newsom Black, on their wedding day. And there she is wearing the dress. So it's very special to all of us.
Do we know where that synagogue was?
I think originally they were like on 26th and L.
That's great that you still have that. It's in great shape, and it's so tiny.
I know. I know. And I was just like, where did she get a waist like
she
that?
doesn't look tiny there. She looks
doesn't,
normal.
didn't she?
Yeah, looking at
Yeah.
normal. And you have another photo? I do. This is a picture of our uncle,
Joe Newsom Black. He was 2 years older than our dad. And a cousin, Joe Reinhardt. They are on a little goat cart. This is the goat that my grandparents had in their backyard. And they got their goat milk and drank their goat milk all the time. And I just love this photo because it's these two little boys.
My grandparents really were illiterate. They never learned to read and write English. When my grandfather, he was a painter contractor, my daddy said Daddy would go with him to, write down everything and do the specs and all that kind of stuff. And my grandmother was a very bright woman, but she never learned to read and write English either. But they sent all three of their kids to college. Okay. And in fact, just one other thing about Rabbi Cohen, Daddy, I recorded my daddy in 1980, and so I was listening to it recently. And he said that one of the scholarships that he got to go to school was from Dr. Cohen.
And also about him, our grandmother used to tell us all the time that if there was any problem for anything, you call Rabbi Cohen and he would solve it.
That's right.
Which they did multiple times.
Yes.
And she did work as a housekeeper for him. And then later, in the later years, she also told me that if he loved her matzo ball soup. So if he had some dignitaries or he had some important people coming by, he would call her to make some matzo ball soup and bring it.
I've enjoyed reading, and I'm going to continue learning more about this, but just to read about it's one thing, but to hear real stories is so much better. Yeah. So thank you both for coming today and sharing your stories. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yes.
We love getting the story out.
One of the wonderful things about hearing these personal stories that I always learn something new, and to learn about how these people came here and the lives and how something in history could change the whole direction of a family as well. So we have an exhibit here. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Galveston County Museum exhibit on immigration?
Yeah. So we have several immigration stories. They are about people from Austria, Germany, Czechoslovakia, and all of these artifacts were brought over by those families from Europe, and they all live very different lives. And so it's all just a lot of personal stories. And one of them is really interesting because we have a Russian Jewish immigrant who came on the Galveston Movement. And he came with a huge, heavy coat. That was what he was used to wearing. Of course, he would have brought that with him. Mm-hmm. When he got here, he realized, I don't need that. So he hemmed it. It's now a waist-length coat where it would have been a full-length coat. And so he came to Galveston, and he was one of the immigrants that just stayed here very briefly. Mm-hmm. He was then sent to Omaha, where he worked in a bakery. He eventually owned that bakery. And he also eventually went back to Europe, married his girlfriend and got her pregnant, and he had to come back to work in Omaha. World War I breaks out. She didn't make it back with him. And so it was all the way till the end of the war before he could bring over his new wife and baby. And they did reunite.
When you look around the museum and you see these artifacts, you have to remember there's a face, there's a family, there's a story behind it. And as I'm looking behind you, I see there's a QR code that says scan to listen. We need to talk about that.
Yeah, so we've installed QR codes throughout the museum, and it's for you to use your phone, scan the code, and listen to the exhibit being sort of told, the stories told to you, so you don't have to read them. And we've done that because we've had several senior visitors who have mentioned to me, I can't see real well anymore, but they're interested in learning the stories. And so all they got to do is scan the code and listen to it.
Oh, that's fantastic. So With the Galveston County Museum, are you still adding things to your collection? And what kind of items would you be looking for that would be of interest for this immigration exhibit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we continue to collect anything related to Galveston County. So even if your family came through Galveston but didn't settle here, just like our Russian Jewish immigrant story, their family brought those artifacts back to the museum. They live somewhere else completely, but it's related. And so we love to tell those kinds of stories too. So yeah, we do continue to collect.
Thank you for tuning in to Unboxing History, presented by the Galveston County Museum. Make sure to share this podcast with your friends and family. And remember, you can find Unboxing History everywhere you listen to podcasts, as well as on our YouTube channel.
And if you want to know more about what's going on at the museum, follow us on social media. Check out our website, www.galvestoncountyhistory.org, where you can also sign up for our newsletter to get our news.
And make sure you stop by the museum. It's open Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 10 to 4, and by appointment on Tuesdays and Thursdays, or do the Padlock Mix Mystery game. And what's the other game that we have available?
We have a scavenger hunt. You can scan on your phone and play a game while you're here.
So let's make history fun, and remember, learning's always growing.